Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Alan Wake 2, the Lake House DLC. I play on the Xbox Series X. It's also available wherever Alan Wake 2 is available. So you play as Kieran Estevez of the FBC, and her and her team are stopping by the local FBC scientific facility on their way to Bright Falls. It's called, well, the Lake House. And this being FBC and Alan Wake related, well, things can't just be a simple check-in. The facility is run by the Marmonts, who are a married couple who really just you gotta wonder about. And you start to uncover some of the stuff that's been going on there, and it gets dark. I gotta say, overall, while it treads on some territory we've seen a million times over, at least when we're talking about some of the themes that they cover, I do think it was a good story. I was enjoying it. I like Kieran as a character. And for me, it's always fun to spend more time in the Control/Alan Wake universe. But let's get on to the audio, and I'm gonna say the voiceover work is really well done. It definitely fits with what you're used to from these games, which also goes for the music and the sound effects. They're both top notch. They really work with the experience. Both build a good spooky atmosphere. The one complaint I do have in the audio section is the mixing is shit. I don't know why it's shit, but it is. I had to tweak my settings because the music and the sound effects would be too loud at times. I'd be playing like a tape recorder and trying to listen to it so that I could, get a better sense of what's going on, but the music would be way too loud or the sound effects would be just way too loud. So that was a bit frustrating. I didn't love that for obvious reasons. Let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and it's a third-person shooter / survival horror game. And despite the fact you're playing as an FBC agent, most of them don't have superpowers. So it plays a lot more like an Alan Wake game. You need to use your flashlight to break down enemies and then shoot them. They do introduce this whole element of these paint monsters, and those things suck. The paint monsters are created from the shadow and, all of that, but they're paint monsters and they're sufficiently creepy and lanky. But the way they come at you, they'll come out of the walls where there's paintings. And the thing is, you'll see these humanoid paintings on the wall and not all of them are going to be those creatures. I will say they were a bit of a pain in the ass because you don't get a way to defeat them until far later in the DLC. Not that it's a super long DLC, but nonetheless. And none of that is a complaint. I think it actually works very well. I forgot about dodging until way later on, and I probably would have done better had I remembered dodging. Though I did feel there were times where the dodging didn't save me the way I would have liked it to, so that got frustrating. The one complaint I do have in the gameplay mechanics section, real complaint, is the map is kind of fucky and shitty all at once. It's great that you have a map, and it's a great thing that the map will show you points of interest, as well as containers that have supplies you need. But I had 2 containers showing on my map that just weren't fucking there at all. Didn't seem to exist. And then points of interest that I had already investigated still show up or aren't marked off. It would be great if they were crossed off on the map. Especially since Kieran does mark up the map, it would be a really cool element for them to, cross out points of interest you've already read or containers you've already collected. Let's get into the controls, and I don't have any complaints with the controls. I think they worked well. I mean, it's a DLC. If the controls don't function at least as well as the main game, then there's a problem. Let's get into the graphics and visuals then, and it's a good looking game. It looks just as good as Alan Wake 2 did. As it should. It wouldn't make sense if it looked worse than the main game, unless there was some story reason for that. The shadow-possessed people are creepy. I already kind of described the paint dudes as being these tall, lanky, kind of spooky motherfuckers who come out of walls, which is, that's never creepy at all, ever. They actually do a really cool job with this game, blending Alan Wake and Control though, because the lake house itself feels a lot more like an area out of Control, but then you get the spooky, weird visual effects and creatures and so on. I call them creatures, but shadow possessed from Alan Wake, and it actually comes together very well to create a good horror environment that leaves you a little scared at times. It wasn't the scariest thing, but definitely spooked, a little tense for sure. I'd say that's the biggest difference in this DLC is that it's very much, inspired by the old house in its world design. So it has a much more FBC design to it, Control design to it, which does work and it's cool and it does help marry the 2 universes even more. The only visual complaint I really have is that there was one time I opened a locker and the door was open, but not open all at once. It was like Schrodinger's locker door, except for I was looking at it. What made it weird though, and not like some weird like glitch in like the game in a way that makes sense, but like an actual glitch, is that I was able to reach into the locker and grab the items out of it. It does a lot of the horror things that you got out of Alan Wake 2 from a visual standpoint, which work and they're startling. So I appreciate that they're still there and it keeps continuity. Okay, so to wrap this up, I enjoyed it. I really have zero complaints. I always want to spend more time in the Alan Wake / Control universe. So having more of that, having more DLC makes me happy. Apart from having a couple of minor complaints, I really enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed Alan Wake or Control, you should definitely be playing this DLC. Okay, in the comments down below, since this is coming out before Halloween, what is your Halloween go-to, game or movie? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.